So I've put together a little something talking about how to make your goals reality using Tango and using a structured process around it. Tango is, as you know, you've been using it for a long time. It's a fantastic tool. So we'll step through a little bit about my experience with it. Talk about me. Like, okay, who is this person that's talking to you? So I'll give you a little bit of my background, talk a little bit about some Tango results, what we've been able to achieve with it at a few different sites, look at the integrated condition report, and then really get into the meat of it, talking about REDS meetings, process, and then training. Like, what does it take to make this successful? Of course, we wanted everyone to get the point that you can meet your goals by using Tango. Great tools still require a plan for how to use them.
Back when we got started, we developed the integrated condition report, and I thought that was going to be kind of the end all be all, as we get that information out in front of everybody, and they would run with it, and great things would happen. Well, it turned out that it was certainly an advantage over emails and so forth, but it still wasn't the end of what we needed, because what we found is that people still weren't paying enough attention to it. So Kevin was really a pioneer in what we call RED meetings, and that is taking the information that's in the integrated condition report and meeting with plant teams in order to make the work management side of things happen. And so that's kind of where we are right now, is that we found that we really had to supplement the integrated condition report a little bit to really be wonderfully successful with it. So Kevin, I'll give it back to you, but I just want to throw that in.
Yeah, thank you, Forrest. Yeah, that's good. We've had to work through, like, how do we deal with the culture change side of it, right? How do we deal with that problem? So a little on my background, I've done capital project management, maintenance, Six Sigma. In some of my latest roles, I was dealing with multi-site. Two last companies, I was dealing with multiple sites, 4 to 10 sites, depending on the company. Done some certification work in CRL as well as CMRP. Experience with planning and scheduling, turnaround management, condition monitoring, program installation, fixed equipment repair, of course. I think altogether, I was trying to count them up the other day. I think I've worked with 21 different sites over my career, working directly with the users or the owners. I've been working with Tango since somewhere around 07, maybe 06. It's been a while. I was the recipient of it then, and as time went along, I started being the installer because it was that good. And I think Forrest has probably got a better count on this than I do, that we've installed it at 9 sites so far, in the past, I don't know, 9-10 years. So what is in this for you? Here's an example from one of the facilities where I worked. This was the first one that I used Tango in, and we started out installing a condition monitoring program and having technicians go around and take lots of readings, vibration, infrared, all the different technologies. And right at half of our running assets, just generally think of rotating equipment and electrical, roughly half of the assets that we had in our monitoring program had something wrong. They had hot spots, they had bad bearings, they had cooling issues, whatever it might be. So if you can imagine what it was like trying to live in that environment, it was constant emergencies. Things were failing because we didn't have that perception or view into it. So when Tango was installed and we started keeping track of REDS, which REDS, really all that is a defect or deficiency that you found through your condition monitoring program. It's an exception reporting term, right? It's either green, meaning nothing's wrong with it, or it's red, hey, there's a problem, we need to do something with it. So over about a 1.5-year period of time, we brought that site down from almost half to 10%. And then in the next 6 to 8 months after that, off the chart to the right, we brought it down to closer to 4 to 5% of our assets with a running problem. Made a huge difference in the amount of emergency work that we had, as well as cost. At that facility, over the 7-8 years that I was in that at that particular site, we brought our head count down by roughly 50% because we just weren't needing that volume of people. Here's another example from another facility where I installed Tango and we started doing condition monitoring, added more routes, added more assets to the program. So Tango will track a lot of metrics for you. It's a great tool for that. you could see where our number or our average days to close some issue kept going up and up and up, right? So that was a roughly 6-8 month period of time. And then we established the REDS meetings. We started that discipline, that order, that part of the culture change. And lo and behold, people actually started doing the work and fixing the equipment. Okay, so we talked about this just a few minutes ago. You've been using this thing for a long time. You're aware of all the Tango features, so I'll skip over that. Integrated condition status report. I guess both of you are familiar with using this every day, right? You've seen this before.
Yeah, for sure. Every day.
Every day, good. What I love about when I'm introducing this to new users, especially operations people or planners or people that haven't used Tango before, is it's almost like the ad from what is it, Staples, with the easy button, the big red button. In this case, for them, it's that stethoscope icon there. They just click on that and they get everything that we know is wrong and they need to go fix. So talking a little bit about the process, like how do we manage these deficiencies? How do we make this work, right? So Tango provides us the information, but how do we convert that into action? Typically, the biggest issue, and you've probably seen the same thing, is you find it, but people aren't responding and doing anything about it, right? And depending on the asset, the time period from when you identify the defect until it fails in service may not be very long. So we'll go through just a simple workflow. I don't know if you can see my pointer or anything, but it will start at the top right. A technician gets his route assignment from Tango. You're familiar with how to set up the routes. There's a couple different ways to do that, but you set up the routes in Tango. The technician runs the routes. If he's got a problem, you start down this vertical section of the flow diagram. And as you work your way through it, you get to this red circled block of weekly condition REDS meetings with unit operations, maintenance, and reliability. Okay, so this is what I'm really showing is more of just a workflow for how to go do the routes and how to process the work and get things done. But this is an integral piece of the flow. Without that, many times the condition monitoring findings will fall on the back burner or just get lost in the backlog for a production unit or a site. As you're going through this REDS meeting, decisions made in there carry over into the work order management process as far as prioritizing and scheduling the work. You've probably seen this before, maybe not, where planners will use Tango, use that integrated condition report to prioritize what work they're going to be doing. In other words, they're looking out into the future and saying, okay, what do I need to order materials for, or plan the jobs, or scope out? And Tango is a great place to go to get it. Now, granted, there's many times there's schedulers or coordinators or people, prioritizing for the planner, telling him what needs to be done first, second, third. But Tango is going to tell him that as well. Maintenance supervisors will use Tango to manage any temporary mitigation tasks. And, for example, sometimes you may have an asset that's sick, and because of Tango, the supervisor that's in charge of maintenance for that unit knows, hey, something's wrong with this thing. So he may assign a technician to go by and check on it once a day. Go grease it, go check the temperature, go do something, because they know it's in the process of failing, and they're planning and scheduling the repair or the replacement, but they're having somebody babysit it in the meantime. Production will use it to communicate from shift to shift on the condition of the asset, and I've seen this used where let's say you've got an A and a B pump, or you've got a piece of equipment. They'll communicate to each other from one shift to the other. Hey, don't run this one unless it's a crisis. Run this other one. Stay on this other one. Something's wrong with the one we have down. It'll run if you have to have it run, but leave it alone. Maintenance is coming to fix it. All of them use Tango as a communication tool, and automated emails are fantastic, right? Just closing the loop on who's doing what. So here's the meeting structure, a little bit about training, and especially the culture change, because a lot of people will treat a new tool as just another tool, but really Tango shines with REDS meetings for changing the culture of a site, getting people to think, act, behave differently. Most meeting structures that I've set up consist of the production, which could be a production coordinator. These titles or names are going to vary from company to company. It could be a production supervisor, production superintendent. It's really what we're talking about is the people that have control of production, the people that can say, hey, we're going to shut this unit down, or we're going to reduce rates, or the people that have control of that. Then somebody from maintenance, and sometimes it's several people from maintenance, planner, supervisor, maintenance superintendent, maintenance manager, engineer, people that control the repair work, people that control the execution of the repair. And then the last piece of it is condition monitoring technicians, people that understand what they found. In other words, you want to have somebody from each of those groups in the meeting representing that group, but they also need to have decision rights. They need to have some stroke or some capabilities. They review the integrated condition report, right? They just read through it one at a time. And on each one of them, they discuss how serious is the problem, what's the status of planning, parts, special resources, when can the work fit in the production schedule? Is there, in the near future, where could we make it happen? Does this need to be a break-in, or can this just be scheduled, at some other period in time? Can the maintenance budget absorb the cost of the repair? Is that something we can do this month, or can we wait until the first week of next month because my budget is I'm already overrunning my budget this month? All of those kinds of discussions take place in there. It's not really a problem-solving session where you're trying to solve the issue. It's more of each one of the different departments or groups getting to put their comments or ideas into how are we going to deal with this. Training for the people, like if you just give them an integrated condition report, they're probably going to fall on their face. I mean, they'll look at it and a few people will go, hey, this is really cool. But as far as an overall functioning organization, they're busy. They've got other things to do. The production people are focused on every pound that they're making, each day, each shift. The maintenance people are dealing with what broke this morning. They've got plenty of distractions. So each person that's in this process needs to be trained on how does it work. Of course, how to click on that stethoscope icon for the integrated condition report, and the expectations of them and the other people in the team. That can be done through a process overview like we were just doing, followed by a role-playing session where the team members learn by reading through a script as a group. I found that works really well. The REDS meeting facilitator, you want to have a person in each of the REDS meetings that's responsible for making it flow and working through issues or problems, or if it turns into a problem-solving session, to shut that down and say, hey, we need to do that offline. Let's keep going through our integrated condition report. And then other key roles such as planners, schedulers, coordinators, supervisors, they may need some one-on-one coaching to help them be successful, because each one of them is going to use Tango in a little different way, and they may need some help. Right? It's a good thing to have a RACI chart. This is going to vary from site to site, company to company. What are their titles? What are their positions? And then what are they going to be responsible for doing, within Tango or in the work process? Who's going to set up and run the route? Who's going to enter the condition entries into Tango? And some of these could be really obvious. It could be really simple. But when you get into the details, different, there may be some sites or companies that you work with where a maintenance supervisor will not check off for the repair. He's just not going to do it. So you need someone else to be responsible for that. Planning a job and ordering parts, scheduling it, who's going to put it in the production schedule, who's going to approve spending, because many times there's somebody looking at the spending and then trying to make decisions to stay within their monthly budget, quarterly budget, whatever it is. Someone looking at the scope of the job and saying, okay, well, we found this particular problem with the bearing, but you're saying we need to go, replace the entire motor. I think I can just replace the bearing, blah, 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 have that kind of conversation. So for the facilitator, these are some notes that I put together for all the engineers that I've coached and worked with. I usually had a maintenance or reliability engineer be the facilitator for the meetings. And I would have them choose the meeting room, day, time that works for the whole team. They would poll the whole team for that particular production unit, that particular area of the facility that was going to be in the meeting, negotiate when they're going to do it, set out a 30-minute. Now, sometimes the first time you do it, if you're just setting up a condition monitoring program and just starting to run routes, if that's never really been done in a site before, the first meeting may take an hour and a half. After a month or two, 20 to 30 minutes should be about as long as it takes, because you'll find people start doing a lot of the pre-work for the Reds meeting, before the meeting, outside the meeting. They do their negotiations, talking, discussing, making decisions before they get there, and then it's more just a report out. One key pitfall is number 5, right? Don't try to mix this in with another meeting. If you're doing this, for the first time at a plant, they're busy, and many of them will want to say, hey, we already have a weekly scheduling meeting. Let's make this part of our weekly scheduling meeting. Don't do that. That is not going to help you change the culture. What that's telling you is that they don't think this is important. They're trying to satisfy you, but they're also trying to make this go away, right? So in trying to make this function or work, we're trying to change the way they think, change their mindset, get them into a different operating mode, if you want to call it that. To create a new good habit, you have to have a dedicated time for it. And once you've done it enough, and they're all in the habit to where if you walk away, they're going to keep doing it. Once you get to that point, maybe you can explore advancing into another mode. Like I've even seen one site that got good at it, and it was a larger facility, and people had to travel, walk a good distance to get to the conference room. So they started doing video conferencing, or doing a WebEx like we're doing now. They were using a different tool for it. They're using Microsoft Teams or Skype or some other tool like that. But they would have a few people in the conference room and a lot of people calling in, and it was just a time saver for them. But they were still all participating. They were all, part of it. They were just doing it more remotely. So the bottom half, I won't read through all this, but it's expectations of the facilitator, what the facilitator needs to do before the meeting. They need to go into Tango, look at all the data. If they see anything that looks crazy on the entries, they need to clean that up, because you don't want to get in front of that group and have something in there that's demotivating or embarrassing to the whole group. Forcing these face-to-face discussions and the accountability that goes with it is effective. So here's a little role play. I won't read through the whole thing unless you want to do it here. But if you've got this list of people that's in it, different roles, those titles are going to be different from company to company, facility to facility. But the gist of it is, you've got people saying, what's the condition of the asset? Who's got the ball? At what point are we in the work process of repairing this thing? When can we get it into the production schedule? How much is it going to cost? Can I do it this month or not? And with some companies, maybe budget isn't a big deal, and they just spend what they need to spend to keep it running. That's good. With others, they may be tighter, more constrained, or they're trying to keep their cash flow level month to month across the business. So depending on what the requirements are there, then maybe money comes into play, and there's some negotiations on when it gets executed, or if it can even last until the next financial period. Production gets their say so in on it. There's usually some talk about, hey, if this thing fails, what will it do to us? If it fails in service. There may even be some comments and discussions about, do we need to have our operators treat this asset differently while we're waiting on the repair? Do we need to baby it or not run it because we've got a spare? We'll just run the spare. All those kind of discussions take place, but it should be fairly quick once they get in the habit, once they learn what the expectations are and what their role is and what they're responsible for. The reliability maintenance engineer, the maintenance supervisor, manager, if you can get the operations manager and the maintenance manager to come to these meetings, they don't have to come to every single one, but if they can come to enough of them to where the attendees think the boss might be here, that also helps with the amount of effort that they put into it and the performance that they get. We talked about this a little earlier, but the dedicated meeting creates a new habit for the organization. Don't let them blend it into any other existing meeting. I mean, they may work into that in a 12-month period of time to where they've developed the habit so strongly, or the culture is established so strongly that you can do that. But don't try it initially. Get the managers to attend if you can. Record notes in the Tango integrated condition status report. As each one of those deficiencies is talked about with the group, if the planner says, I'll have the pump delivered by a certain date, put comments in there in the notes section for that condition entry that says, hey, Bob says he's going to have this pump here by this date. Just by entering it in there and them seeing that it's being entered in there, they know, all right, I don't want to show up in front of this group in 2 weeks and not have what I said I would have. They see that it's being recorded. They know that they personally volunteered to make it happen, whatever it was. So it's a matter of pride in their work. They tend to police themselves when they see it going into Tango. After enough time, the results will become self-evident, and you'll get more buy-in from the team. Even people that weren't quite as interested in it will buy in. In the book that I have on the right, if you haven't read it, I would suggest reading through it. It talks about culture and defining it. What is that? I mean, we all use that word a lot, but what in the world is culture? And the Tango Reds meeting falls into the category of rites and rituals underneath that box on the left-hand side of the book. You're establishing the habit of meeting at a certain time on a certain day of each week and talking about certain things, and everybody knows what's expected of them, and it's going to happen every week, regardless of what they think. And if one of them can't be there, they need to send a representative, right? If somebody's on vacation or they're out, they need to send somebody in their place. So here's some examples. This is, you can probably tell from the look of it, a few years old. But I use these as examples where in the status comments in the right-hand column, you can see where people have been putting comments on the work. You can see where they've been putting in work order numbers. And then for the individual entries, the technicians put proof of whatever they said they found. If they said they found a problem, they have to put some documented proof in the condition entry. It can't just be a sentence or a few words. It's got to be something out of their system to prove to the world, yep, we've got a problem. Then as people get used to using this is an example of a string of entries as work got rescheduled, if you want to call it that, on a particular issue. And you can see that it took a while, but if you think of a year as being this particular company, if you think of a year as being 52 weeks, well, in week 17 they were scheduling it for repair. April 13th, Wade Jones put in that comment at the bottom, and then it progresses up. So, oh well, we had to reschedule for week 18, move to week 22 to replace pump with a spare, and then you can see where Chris Harrell entered on May 12th, 2015, about the middle of the screen, that the valves didn't hold and they couldn't isolate it to replace the pump. So they had to punt on that job and reschedule. They had the spare rotating assembly on hand in case the pump didn't make it. This guy that was doing the early entries was the supervisor for the maintenance crew. Chris Harrell was a reliability engineer. And then Wade says, well, we rescheduled it for May 29th on the night shift. And then on June 1st, we removed it. We found all parts badly corroded, oil was contaminated, replaced the bearing housing, cover plate, what have you. In other words, we repaired it, we fixed it on June 1st. So that's pretty much what I had for today. I stepped through it quickly. I'm trying to be respectful of your time, but I hit my mark on 30 minutes. And if y'all have any questions or thoughts, or you want to have some discussion, let me know.
And let me throw something out for a moment. Back a year and a half ago, Andy, who's on the call, called me and said, the plant guys aren't paying enough attention to Tango. How do I get them to pay more attention to what the reliability group was putting in? And Andy and I talked about red meetings, and I sent him some of the material that Kevin and I had put together. And I think that those are beginning to be successful for you, aren't they, Andy?
Well, they were until COVID hit, and COVID shut down our red meetings. So we have not been able to follow up since, I guess, March or so when that hit.
Do you see that things are declining because of that, or?
Yeah, definitely. As far as entries being checked off, I think a lot of work was getting done. It just wasn't being documented. As a reliability group, a predictive group, we were, cranking out a lot of reports, but never seeing anybody respond to them. And I think people were, like I said, doing work. They just weren't letting us know. So then we couldn't put hands in the information in the hands of the route technicians that were going out to take new data. Well, is this a new pump or is this still the old pump? Or so now we try to feedback loop that information. Once we have updated condition comments, we do, as he was describing, put the condition comment there, and we'll then export that to Excel, filter it, and give that handout to the vibe tech who's going out and taking data. Like, hey, here's what the last comment was on this ICSR that's open, this condition entry. Here's what the engineer said or the technician said. So yeah, I think it was helpful. We were seeing more checked off. We were cleaning out our system. It was very much backlogged from a ton of condition entries that had not been updated. Yeah, we were making good progress, and then we got shut down.
So Andy, have you tried doing some kind of video or audio conferencing for your meetings?
I have not. I keep thinking that restrictions are going to loosen up and we can meet together, but they just keep getting tighter, at least at our
Right.
plant, as far as meeting in person. So I probably should more seriously consider that. Maybe open to some tips on how to go about it. Right now, I don't think most of the engineers do conference calls and have video cameras. They could probably at best just call in on their cell phone to listen and then do a screen sharing. We do have Google Meet as a part of our company system,
Yeah.
so we could do that. I guess, do people respond well to that? I guess I assume that if you can't see them, if they don't have cameras and I don't know, they're not making eye contact in a way. I know it's through a screen, but I just envision people not being engaged. But do you find people respond that way?
Yes, it works. And now, like you're saying, it takes away the nonverbal, right? Nonverbal communication,
Mm-hmm.
but it still works because you find a lot of companies during this COVID problem are doing remote meetings, right? They're using a lot of these tools, whether it's Google or Microsoft Teams or Skype or WebEx or whatever else. They're using it to hold meetings instead of being face to face, and work is still getting done. So I would try it. Try the Google thing. Use some of your guys. Just practice it. Try it. See how it works and how that communication goes. You get used to the interface and presenting the information. I've seen some of my engineers in the past that would take the integrated condition report and convert it into a PDF and send that out. So everybody had it a day or two before the meeting, and then during the meeting, they just put Tango on the screen and they go through line item by line item. Whichever ones haven't been checked off, and people answer, comment, and respond over the conference call, just like they were in the room with you. All right. And you're still putting notes in there in the comments that, Joe said he's going to do this, or Bob says he's going to do that, or, whatever.
Right.
So there's still, it's not as good as in person, but it works.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I should pour some effort to that. I think one of the challenges too with us, with our group, and just being kind of, me basically running those meetings, got to be a lot because we have 5 main areas, each with a lead engineer and then 3 to 6 engineers under them. Yeah, so me leading 5 of those meetings a month got to be a lot. So I don't know, would you recommend the lead engineers kind of taking over and running these meetings, or do you think
Yes.
that still needs to be facilitated by a central group,
No.
the predictive maintenance guys?
Divide and conquer. Yeah.
Okay.
Sub it out.
Yeah.
I did that. I had my last role. I had 5 sites running Tango.
Mm-hmm.
So I just trained the reliability or maintenance engineer that was responsible for a given area on how to be a facilitator. And
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's your job. You facilitate the meeting each week,
Okay.
right? I would have them invite me to their first couple of meetings, and I would help them. I would demonstrate the behaviors that I want to see. The questions that I would ask, the way that I would keep the meeting flowing, and then I would hand it off to them and still attend, right? Listen, see how they're doing, see if they have any problems, and then back out of it completely,
Okay.
right? You can periodically drop in on them, but if you've got what was it, 5 areas?
5, yeah. 5
Yeah,
areas.
yeah. Don't try to do all that yourself, but you'll have to, because there's a limit, right? You've got other things you've got to do besides just these meetings, and each
Right.
week's got to consume a lot of your time. So get
Mm-hmm.
them trained up to where they can do it, and they should be able to, once they're in the habit and doing it well, probably 20 minutes and they can be done. I'm making assumptions there. I've had some where a given production unit would have 450 pieces of rotating equipment and they could get it done in 20, 25 minutes. I've had some other sites with smaller units, but there were more units, and the units were lumped together. Instead of having an engineer for each unit, they'd have several units with one engineer. So there is a point at which, hey, the list of findings in the report gets so long that it becomes harder to manage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in some of those cases, you can just start with the highest, the most severe, and say, okay, well, since we've got this huge volume, let's just limit our scope of our meeting to the ones, twos, and threes or something, right?
Yeah,
Or find some way to manage it.
Yeah, that's what we definitely had to do starting out. We had so much backlog in the system that there's no way. I guess we've got a red, orange, yellow kind of system, and so we literally could only do the reds. If we got ventured into the oranges and the yellows, we'd be there all afternoon.
Are this is a little beyond, the scope of what we're going to talk about today, but have you started tracking in Tango any of your cost savings? The actual cost for the repair versus the potential cost if you'd have let it run to failure or didn't know there was a problem. If you can do some of that, the last company that I was working with, we did that at our largest site and started reporting the numbers. And it's not an exact science, right? You have to make assumptions and simplifications. But what's important is you get operations, maintenance, and reliability engineering. You get them to agree that, yeah, this is probably a pretty good number. And if they all have some say so in each of the entries for that unit or that area, then none of them will argue, and they'll support whatever the metrics are showing. That last company, we reported $9 million in avoided cost for the year. And it was, yeah.
Wow.
So once you do that and you figure out, okay, well, if I'm not making that up as, just the reliability group, I've got operations and maintenance buying in on it too. Once you've got that number and you figure out, okay, well, that paid for all of my people doing condition monitoring the first 3 months of the year, and the rest of that was just profit, right? It was making me money, or I could use that money to do something else with, which is typically what happens. You'll get a lot more buy-in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Even if you just document the top few big saves you have, you don't have to document everything. Just get the important ones and document that, and it'll still show a good size savings probably.
Yep. I had one site in 2011 where we'd started doing this, and I just approximated and said, okay, well, for every, let's pretend that the average condition monitoring finding saved us $5,000, versus run to failure. And I published that. I don't have the actual numbers, but I just assumed, 5,000 seemed like a reasonable number given the cost of our assets, and it was millions of dollars. So, even if it was partially correct, it would more than justify the program and people's time and attention spending with it.
Okay.
Like I say, I think that Andy, Kevin, you didn't realize you were a part of that, but I think Andy benefited from some of your presentations you did several years ago on this.
Well, good.
Yep.
It's always good to help. It's that's fun to me. Get to see people win.
All right. Any other questions? Anything else anybody want to talk about?
No, not really. It's just good to see how somebody always does it a little bit different. We've got quite a few different clients, and we have instead of a Reds meeting, we call it an exit meeting, and we kind of go over all the most recent entries, during the month or whatnot, and anything that's been revisited where the severity's gone up, from a low to a high or high to critical or something. But yeah, so it's nice to see how somebody else does it too.
Good.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for attending, and lots of new things going on. We're hard at work right now qualifying a new rounds logging app, and I'm going to be sending out material on that over the next few weeks. Article and plant services on root cause failure analysis just was out. I think we'll be getting that out to everybody as a PDF on it if you haven't seen it already. So again, lots of neat things going on. All right, guys. Well, thanks, and we will talk to you again in a week or two.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, guys.